All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, as the Dallas Cowboys won the NFC East for the first time since 2018, they were hopeful that this was going to be their year where they would make a Super Bowl run. But those hopes were extinguished today as they fell at home to the San Francisco 49ers in the wild card round by the score of 23 to 17. Now, the 49ers set the tone on the opening drive of the game when they marched down the field on a 7 play, 75-yard drive that was capped off by a 4-yard touchdown run from running back Elijah Mitchell. The Niners dominated the first half, but unfortunately for their part, they were only up 16-7 at the half as they kept having to settle for field goals. Now, the Cowboys also dodged a bullet because the 49ers had several chances to put this game away, but the inaccuracy of quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo kept the game close and gave the Cowboys a chance. I mean, you look at it at 23-7, he had a chance to salt that game away had he completed that pass, had a wide open receiver and failed to execute there. Dallas defensively could not stop Debo Samuel, and I expected him to be a factor in this contest coming in. And it wasn't just Debo Samuel; it was that power rushing attack from the Niners as they amassed 169 yards on the ground. This San Francisco defense, and this is to their credit, and it was a great game plan from defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryans. They were able to keep pressure on Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott all game long, in spite of the fact that they lost their best pass rusher, Nick Bosa, late in the first half to a head injury. Now, the $75 million man, Dak Prescott, was 23 of 43 passing today for 254 yards with a touchdown and a costly pick. And Dak looked uncomfortable for the majority of this game, and that has to be attributed to this Niners defense. I look at the way that they put pressure on Dak, mainly from their front four, and credit to D'Amico Ryan's because a lot of times in third and long and second and long situations, he just didn't rely on his front four getting home. He brought pressure. He brought pressure from the secondary a couple of times, and Dak was not ready for it. And the real reason I say he wasn't ready for it is because that pressure was disguised really good because it was one of those where you didn't see the DBs or the linebackers committing themselves to blitz until the Cowboys offensive line and the Cowboys running backs had already committed to who they were going to block on a play. So by the time Dak realized it, it was just simply too late. You look at it though, Dak's costly gaff on the final play of the game, and I'm not sure whether that was a play called from Mike McCarthy, if this was something called by offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, or this was a Dak audible, so to speak. But nonetheless, it was costly. You had 14 seconds on the clock. The Niners were going to that prevent shell. They weren't going to let you get to the end zone. They were going to make it tough for you to get to the sidelines, but you still had an opportunity. And I figured at that point, with what the Cowboys were doing on that drive, that Dak was probably going to try to get them a little closer to have one or two legit shots at the end zone. But just running it right there, taking the knee, and then it wasn't just Dak. It looked like the Cowboys, like with the exception of the O line, the Cowboy receivers, for the most part, there was no sense of urgency from people to get lined up. And, some people are going to blame it on the referee, but the bottom line is you just don't call that play in that situation. And because of that, that's part of the reason why the Cowboys are going home, not the sole reason, because honestly, the Cowboys did more damage to themselves today than the 49ers did. 14 penalties to tie the franchise record for the postseason. And I don't care who you are, you're not going to win a lot of games, regular season or postseason, when you have 14 penalties like the Cowboys did this afternoon. And I mean, it wasn't just the penalties, it was the timing of the penalties. You look at it, you had them dead to rights in third down situations. You gave them an opportunity late in the game to run off more time on the clock. These are big plays. These are big moments. And you look at it, Dallas was the most penalized team during the regular season. San Francisco had their fair share of penalties as well. We saw that, especially when you had Dallas 4th and 20, and you decided to go for a punt block, and you get called for a personal foul penalty for roughing the punter, and instead of getting the ball in good field position, you get the ball right back to Dallas, but it didn't amount to anything. But nonetheless, getting back to Dallas, the penalties really hurt them this afternoon. They've hurt them all season long. These are things that you can get away with when you're playing the teams that are not that good. But when you're up there playing the teams that are the better teams in the league, especially in a postseason situation, these things hurt you. And like I always say, what you can and cannot do, or what you cannot do, always shows up at the most inopportune time. And the Cowboys have shot themselves in the foot time in and time out throughout this year. And typically, if you look at their losses this season, the penalties typically always came in the most inopportune time. That's something that the Cowboys have to work on heading into next season. Zeke Elliott was a non-factor, just 31 yards on 12 carries, and that was to be expected. But what I did not expect, CD Lamb only had one catch today for 21 yards, and he only had 5 targets. That's not going to get it done in this win or go home scenario, and the Cowboys dropped it. There's plenty of blame to go around for this one. You look at Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys head coach. He was brought in rather, to win these type of games, and that's not what the Cowboys did today. Honestly, the Cowboys weren't ready to go at the opening kickoff. And to me, I think that's something that's pathetic from the standpoint you have a playoff game, not a preseason game, a playoff game in your home building. Okay, the fans are into it. I know that there was a good amount of Niner fans there, but nonetheless, this is still a Cowboys home game, and the fans were into that. And the thing was, if you watch the 49ers march the football down the field to begin this game, there was zero resistance from the Dallas defense. San Francisco just simply did whatever they wanted to do. And honestly, the way that the Cowboys started this game, they should be very fortunate that they weren't down 21 to nothing, or that score wasn't like 31-7 at the half. They should be very fortunate in regards to that. And this isn't the first time we've seen this. We've seen the Cowboys come out flat in home games this season to begin, and they figured they could just turn it on whenever they could, and it didn't work. We saw them come out flat against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos punched them in the mouth. We saw them come out flat versus the Raiders, and of course the Raiders beat them on Thanksgiving Day. It's one of those where you know what, you can't just ratchet it up whenever you want to. The Niners are ready to play, and because of that, that put Dallas in chase mode for the rest of the day. That falls into the lap of Mike McCarthy, just like the penalties, just like the execution. Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner slash team president, I'm sure he's not thrilled about this one. Once again, his Cowboys are one and done. The Cowboys still have not advanced past the divisional round since they last won the Super Bowl, which was at the end of the 1995 NFL season. And you look at this right here. I'm not saying that the Cowboys we're going to win the NFC, because the NFC is very top heavy with the Rams, the Bucks, and the Packers. But nonetheless, it's a situation right here where you know what, some people expected them to win a playoff game and at least make a threat in the postseason. That did not happen today. You look at it with the exception of Garoppolo throwing that interception to allow Dallas back into the game. The 49ers, for the most part, had this game in control for the entire day. They dominated and postseason on pardon me, special teams, offense and defense. They ran the football. They were very physical. And this is the thing: the Cowboys have had problems with physical teams all season long, and it caught up to them once again. There's plenty of like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around on this one. Dak has to get some of the blame on this one. He didn't step up and deliver like the Cowboys needed him to today. This defense early on, and then a lot of bad penalties that catches up to you, and it caught up to them again today. So now the Cowboys off season has begun, and they got to try to figure things out. And I think the first thing that they have to try to figure out is, can they win with Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback? I mean, you look at it, Dak is now 1-3 in the postseason, with two of those losses coming at home. And it's a situation for these Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones paid Dak Prescott a lot of money. He was reluctant to at first, but the bottom line is this: when you pay a quarterback the type of money that Jerry Jones paid Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott is getting $75 million this year. When you pay a quarterback that type of money, he has to deliver. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And when he does not, he definitely has to take the blame. You cannot have a performance like Dak Prescott did today, looking like a deer in the headlights at times, and then expect everything is supposed to be hunky dory. That was not the case. Like I said, there's plenty of blame to go around, but Dak definitely gets his fair share as far as the Cowboys falling at home to San Francisco. You look at it for next season, obviously, there's plenty that's going to happen between now and then, but nonetheless, Dallas probably will once again be a playoff team just due to the fact that I look at the division that the Cowboys play in. You look at the Giants are in shambles. They have so many things to figure out. Washington is game, but they have a lot of issues on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not sure if all of those can be corrected in one offseason. And we saw the Eagles get eliminated from the postseason today by the Bucks. Philly definitely overachieved this season. I talked about that earlier, but they have a lot of question marks heading into next season as well. They're probably going to be a young team due to the fact that they have 3 first-round picks in the upcoming NFL draft. But nonetheless, Dallas is still in the catbird seat to win this division and get back to the playoffs next year. But the problem is this: it's not that Dallas can't win this division. It's what Dallas can do against the top tier, upper echelon teams in the NFL. This is when your key players, such as Dak Prescott, have to step to the forefront and make those plays. It's easy to go out there and have big games against Philly like he did last week when he threw for 5 touchdowns. It's easy to put up 40 points on the Giants and Washington. But what can you do against the contenders? Nobody worries about what you do against the pretenders. It's what you can do against the contenders. And unless the Cowboys and Dak figure this out, we are going to have the same discussion 1 year from now. So the onus is on the Cowboys. The onus is on Dak. Let's see what Jerry Jones is going to do with Mike McCarthy. We'll have to wait and see. But I guarantee you, this is not a happy time in Valley Ranch for the boys. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. And before I sign off, I definitely want to answer the question from Trev Wade. Do you think Jerry Jones is the majority of the problem? And Jerry Jones definitely deserves his fair share of the blame for this. And it's not just about today. It's overall where the Cowboys have been for the last 25 years or so. I mean, listen, I said it a long time ago, and Jerry finally admitted to it last year when, you know what, he ran Jimmy Johnson off, and maybe it was a mistake because you look at it, that Cowboy team in the 1990s was set up for success. And, Jerry, it's been hit or miss with his head coaching hires since Jimmy Johnson. I mean, they won a championship with Barry Switzer. But the thing was, you could see when they won that Super Bowl against the Steelers, it was a situation where, you know what, they were just holding on. And of course, Neil O'Donnell being Neil O'Donnell really helped the Cowboys out in that Super Bowl. But nonetheless, once that team got old and once those guys started to retire, the Aikmans, the Emmitt Smiths, the Moose Johnstons, the Michael Irvins, you were never able to replace them. Don't get me wrong, these like three of those four guys that I just mentioned are Hall of Famers. So it's very tough to replace a Hall of Famer. But nonetheless, you figure over the years, Jerry has put the talent there. But the bottom line is the Cowboys always find a way to come up short. And the one constant over that entire period of time has been Jerry Jones. Now, you look at the hire of Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones only interviewed two head coaches after he moved on from Jason Garrett. He interviewed Mike McCarthy and he interviewed Marvin Lewis. Maybe if he had took a little more time, maybe he could have seen some more candidates that were out there. We don't know. There were rumors that maybe Jerry Jones moves on from Mike McCarthy if the Cowboys got eliminated and there was another playoff disappointment. Obviously, they're eliminated. Obviously, this is another playoff disappointment for the Cowboys. This is what Mike McCarthy was brought here to do. He has not done it. Let's not forget, um, last season, it was a situation where the Cowboys still had a scenario in week number 17 where they went on the road to take on the Giants. They still had an opportunity to win the NFC East. And if you go back and watch that game, Mike McCarthy coached not to win, but to lose. And that's exactly what the Dallas Cowboys did. More and more in these key scenarios, you see it. Mike McCarthy was propped up for a lot of years by the play making ability of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. And, Dak Prescott is not Aaron Rodgers. And you look and it's showing up more and more each time. I think it's a situation where the Cowboys are going to consistently do what we're seeing them do. Like I said, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, they can win the NFC East. They can get to the playoffs, but it's all about playing those top tier teams. What can they do? Even throughout the season, Dallas will play big against the big teams. They came out that first game of the season. They tried to make a statement against Tampa and they fell just short. We saw them get that win the next week on the road in LA against the Chargers. But the thing is like, what are you going to do consistently against those guys when the chips are pushed to the middle of the table? That's what separates the good teams from the great teams. Dallas is not there right now. I don't know if they're ever going to be there. We don't know. They have an opportunity, to be back in this position next year, like I said, because they can win this division. Um, Trev Way is saying, I feel like he can't get good coaches either because nobody wants to coach for him. I mean, Jerry's gotten good coaches after he's messed up with guys he can control. We saw it when he went out there and got Bill Parcells. After a few missteps with the likes of Dave Campo and Chan Gailey. And then that imploded because he wouldn't let Parcells be Parcells. Then he went on to Wade Phillips and Jason Garrett. And, of course, those are two guys he could control. Then he's trying to come in now with Mike McCarthy, so to speak. And you know what? Honestly, we're right back to step one for the Cowboys. So I really don't know what this team is going to do. The bottom line is Dallas wasn't ready to play today. And if you go back and watch that first quarter, again, a home playoff game, either scenario by itself, but both scenarios, a home playoff game, your fans were into it, and they came out and they were as flat as a soda that has been left out, for like 2 or 3 days, and that's unfortunate for the Cowboys. That's unfortunate for their fans because you could see that the fans were really so hopeful that they got it done today. But the bottom line is they could not get it done in spite of the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo played the way that he did in the second half of that game, and they still couldn't get it done. That play call to end the game is going to haunt Dak Prescott and the Cowboys for the entire offseason. You cannot fake that play in that situation. So you look at it right now, this is why the Cowboys are going home. They failed to execute in those key moments. And because of that, it just shows you once again the very thin line as far as winning and losing in the postseason. Everything, everything is under the microscope. The Cowboys couldn't get it done, And that's unfortunately for them, that's the way that the cookie crumbles. So, folks, thank you again. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to Trev Way for chiming in on the chat. I definitely appreciate that. I'll have some more to talk about tomorrow in regards to the NFL playoffs. There's been so much good action to talk about this weekend. So many good games and so much to look forward to for next week. Trev Way has one more, last one. Any blame on the ref at the ending? Well, the thing is this, I mean, it's this has been an unfortunate weekend rather, because the refs have, had their paws in the game, so to speak, and they've been getting beaten up, on social media and by the media overall this weekend, and rightfully so, because I've always questioned where you have these all-star crews during the playoffs, because none of these guys are familiar with working with one another. And you look at it, and obviously they clearly missed that call yesterday during the Raiders Bengals game. I mean, anybody who was watching that game live heard the whistle, and the rule: if there's an inadvertent whistle, the play is called dead, and then you have to have a do-over, and that didn't happen. My biggest thing is this: if that game was in Vegas as opposed to Cincinnati, would that call have been made? We'll have to wait and see. But nonetheless, I look at it. Granted, the ref has to, or the umpire has to place the ball before the play is executed. That was part of it, on that final play. But also on top of that, you just can't make that call if you're the Dallas Cowboys. You just can't have that call right there. You gotta, like, basically they were moving the ball down the field, looking like they were trying to set up to get as close to the end zone as possible. I was thinking maybe they go to the sidelines or something like that, but they didn't do it, and they paid for it. And I mean, you can say what you want. The refs possibly, did screw that up for the Cowboys on that final play, but then they shot themselves in the foot with the 14 penalties. And I mean, San Francisco was right there as they had 9 as well. So I mean, you had two teams that are typically penalized a lot during the regular season. It showed up once again at the most inopportune time, and definitely for the Cowboys, as those 14 penalties definitely hurt them in their chances to advance tonight at home. But once again, folks, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. Much love to Trev Wade for chiming in on the chat. Thanks to everybody out there for tuning in. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. Once again, folks, this is William Martin signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.